Welcome to the Inbound Back Office podcast, where we chat with smart agency owners about agency challenges. I'm Holly Reed, strategist at Inbound Back Office, plug and play back office support for your marketing agency. Today on the show, we are welcoming Melissa Jones, CEO and founder of 3816 Creative, to share with us how to use AI to improve overall team efficiency and client experience. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's great to be here.
Yes. And did I say the agency name right? I should have asked that.
You did.
Okay.
You totally did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is great. So before we dive into this super timely topic about AI, which I'm very excited about, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, your agency, all those kind of things.
Absolutely. So everyone always starts by asking me, what's the deal behind 3816 Creative?
Yeah.
Like, what's the story? And so when I was 10 years old, I was obsessed with art, and I made my parents a deal that if I saved up $100 of allowance money doing chores around the house, that I could get my first drafting desk. And so that's what I did. So that's a home address where it's literally the first spot where I had my art studio. So we're an agency with over 35 years of collective experience between all of our team. But it is a story that's really rich in potency and with a background of fine art. So currently, that's many years ago, but the agency has evolved over a period of time. I went from being a solopreneur who did a lot of lifestyle content with a design studio arm to then kind of naturally just evolving into an agency. And then we rebranded with this brand, coincidentally, the week that the world shut down during 2020.
Of course.
Lots of pivoting that happened, and really in a lot of ways too. I do think it's quite coincidental, because the week that we were really leveling up in our presentation to the world was also the same week that everybody in the world had to have digital transformation to survive.
Yeah.
And so very coincidental. And from there, actually, we've relocated from Northern California to Nashville, Tennessee.
Nice.
And our team is all over the US. So it's been a really fun building process over the past 3 years, something I wouldn't by any means trade for the world. But also really rich in experiences and lessons, right? As you're shifting from that solopreneur to a much larger agency model.
That is awesome. I actually wondered if it was a childhood address. I don't know why, but when I saw it, I was like, I wonder if that has anything to do with that. So I love that. I'm also a Northern California transplant into the Midwest. So I did that journey myself.
Yes.
Well, that is awesome. Okay. So you started your agency in 2020, or rebranded in 2020, let's say. I mean, that's a crazy time, and everything's just gone super fast since then, right? With everything
absolutely
online, Zoom. I mean, no one hardly talked about Zoom, and now it's all anybody talks about, right? Even post-COVID, it's like, still, this is the way life is. But the AI thing really hit the world hard, I'd say January of this year.
Absolutely, right? And so many times when it comes to new technology, as agency owners, in some ways, we have to be early adopters and learn things for the sake of our clients, right? But then when it comes to how it affects the ways we do business and our daily ops, it very rarely affects things. And then I also know, depending on how long you've been in the tech space as well, there is always some kind of idea of just when you see emerging technology to respond from a place of fear. And I feel like a lot of the AI conversation has been surrounded with it's unknown and it's fearful and it's going to take my job. And instead, I always encourage agency owners a few things. To look at it through the lens of curiosity, and then to also allow yourself not only CEO days, which are days where you really get to do the tasks of working on your business rather than in your business. But then I say to also have things that are like innovative days, right? Like it's the places you get to talk about products, you get to go learn something. And truthfully, those will be the things that will fulfill you, particularly because as you grow and do a lot of business development with your agency, you're no longer really doing creative client work, right? You grow out of that, you hire people to do that. And so, when it comes to learning about AI and all the different kinds of AI, whether it's generative, open, close, can it be used on client projects? Can it not? By having that level of curiosity, you're also showcasing thought leadership to your team in a way that they can have curiosity about it as well. And we'll talk a little bit about some best practices too with how to teach your team with best ways to use it.
That'll be great. I mean, I do think there has been such this unknown fear-based thing, but it's a super exciting thing to use. And again, it's another tool, right? And it's how you use it. It's, what are you hoping it's doing for you? It doesn't have to replace anybody's job because, I mean, everyone still loves the human touch. And I think we have gotten more and more and more swung the pendulum that way, honestly, of people still wanting to talk to a person, still wanting to have, someone's actual eyes on it, looking at those things. So the interesting thing about this topic too is how it can actually help your team become more efficient. And that's an interesting one to me because most people are like, how do you use it in your agency for like client stuff and all of that? But it's interesting to me on the team efficiency side. What are some of the tips and tricks you've found that AI has helped with that specifically?
Yeah. So before we take a deep dive, I love to share this quote from Seth Godin. He actually mentioned it on a recent Business Made Simple podcast. And he talks about within the form of ChatGPT, but we can substitute AI in general within this quote. I think it's really applicable. He states that ChatGPT means the end of mediocrity in our line of work. If you're mediocre, it means that a computer can now actually do your job. So for me, he states I had to work extra hard to do the things that ChatGPT cannot do to make it irreplaceable within the marketplace. So when we're looking at maximizing team efficiency, I immediately look at what drives a creative, right?
Yeah.
And creatives get really excited. And within an agency model, right, we also have like what the client wants, right?
Yep.
What their expectation is, what the agency actually produces, and where the profitability exists is within those three segments, right?
Yeah.
And so when I talk about maximizing team efficiency, I'm thinking about your copywriter that for some reason truly believes that writer's block is a real thing. And every day they're waiting for either the perfect idea to strike them to get them started on writing copy. And you're just sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, would you just drink your coffee and write, right? And so utilizing AI as a way for someone to get past the stuckness. Or the other thing that oftentimes with creative direction with clients, we're building out mood boards prior to photo shoots, right? So we're either spending a lot of dollars on stock imagery or kind of Stocksy, Unsplash, just kind of standard stock photo sites. And we could instead be using Midjourney for mood board concepts, right? Because we know we're going in and we're going to be doing this shoot with a photographer, but this is a way we could have an example of what digital art could look like with a really strong idea with creative direction prior to investing in props, prior to investing to be on set. And it makes us wildly more efficient, right?
Yes.
I always tell people too, design and creative, particularly within the lens of user experience, it's always iterative, right?
Yeah.
Which means every single time we're going to always have a rough draft and then it's going to be approved upon, right?
Yeah.
So I'm okay with a rough draft for my team being rough. But oftentimes for most creatives, the most challenging part is getting started and then having the motivation to see a project through. So this utilizing AI and all the collective tools, right? It can really remove cogs in the wheel of your overall team's efficiency. I even remember specifically last week, I had an example where a client had a photographer do photos for them, and the photographer was not in dialogue with us when the session had been taken, which oftentimes means I get really beautiful vertical images because of everybody shooting for stories on Instagram.
Right.
It happens more times than I would ever like to describe, right?
Totally.
Well, and then it wasn't shot for aspect ratio. So it's not like I could punch in and it be utilized for a horizontal desktop image.
Yeah.
And so I just told my designer, okay, let's go use generative AI and let's just get as many within Photoshop to get as many options as we can to get horizontal images from this session. The client's not going to go pay for a reshoot.
Yeah.
And that took what could have been a client dialogue of going back to the client and asking them to book another session, and it'd be a cog in the wheel of a delay of anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks, depending on that photographer's queue, to now being done in a matter of minutes.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. The other thing with that is it goes into the client experience is if that wasn't able to be used, and they might go, well, I need to go find a different agency that can do this, because if depending on how expensive that particular photo shoot was,
right,
it can just cause all sorts of issues. So having AI that can just kind of make it work,
right,
saves everybody a headache and a possible loss of a client, to be honest.
Absolutely. Some of the other tools that I find really interesting and really helpful, you'll notice both Figma this year within Config has talked about a lot of AI tools that they're launching. I would suspect, I'm just going to say this after some Adobe community events, to expect many of the generative AI tools, both within Creative Cloud and to Figma, to have commercial licenses added to them come October, because Adobe Max is coming up in October, and products are already starting to go that way within Creative Cloud Suite, but very specifically within the design and within the agency world, those are going to be things that are really going to save us a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
From heat mapping within prototypes before something has a hot jar applied to it, and heat maps within Shopify, or really, really detailed kind of things within the creative work. But that takes so much of our team's time, and in reality, really drive our profitability on jobs down. Yeah.
I mean, it's a way, AI to me is a way to improve efficiency, improve your profits, get higher quality work, eat faster, but it also generate ideas. Like you said, it's hard for writers to get going sometimes if they're not feeling that inspiration. I know, sometimes I'll sit there with coffee and I'm like, come on, brain, but type something into ChatGPT. It's like, oh, there it is. That's, it gets your brain just sparked, especially if you work by yourself. And I think with a lot of remote workers, if they're not working in an agency building, it can be so hard to bounce ideas off people, right? And that's where a lot of creativity can come into play. But if you can use an AI tool to be that person you're bouncing stuff off of, it not only helps you get started, but helps you finish that last 5% that you're like, oh, I'm stuck again. How do I wrap this thing up? It's just so helpful. And I don't think it should be anything someone should be afraid of. Rather, it should be something we grasp onto and go, okay, how can we use this to get better at our jobs and better serving our clients?
For sure. So when it comes to using AI, these are kind of the parameters that we've laid out for our team to really help them understand what are do's and don'ts, particularly if you're having somebody that's more junior level. I would say just in the same way where with designers, you could ask yourself, how far is too far with inspiration? Right. I think that we could say the same thing with origin with AI tools. And specifically, ChatGPT is probably the one that we most commonly talk about because it has the largest adoption of users.
Right.
And it's really important too that once Google starts to see content that's all copy and paste, it's actually not going to help a client for ranking with search engines, right?
No.
So the first thing is to always get specific. So teaching people from an SOP perspective and education on your team of what are the very specific prompts that you need to be utilizing within content marketing, for example, or within blog posts, things like that, or even imagery, like through Midjourney. So that way you can really start to get results. From there, we always encourage people as well. You had mentioned it, a human touch, right? To never solely copy and paste, both from a legality perspective, as soon as you copy and paste something from AI, your website is no longer copyrightable according to the spirit of the law in the United States, right? So that's a really big deal, particularly not only for yourself, but then also for your clients, right? As you're doing client work for them. And so operating with integrity with that. And then when using it for campaigns, we want to be really, really mindful if advertising spend is tied to it, right? So particularly when it comes to imagery, while Midjourney will technically, based off of prompts, never recreate the same image twice, we encourage people to really be mindful of the copyright behind it and to really have it serve as a form of inspiration. And then if you know who the artist is, or you can actually contact the artist, paying them royalties accordingly, right? So that's really, really important to have. And then when you're working with your staff, teaching them how to properly incorporate this in their workflows. So if you want them to use AI at the start of their process, for example, as they're cultivating ideation and inspiration, allow that to be a part of their vernacular just as much as drawing and sketching logo ideas or wireframes, right? Really teaching them, where does this go and where do we get to kind of play in Pandora's box within AI tools? And then where are places where we really need to hone things in, right? Because we don't want to continually keep on opening up the box or feeling like it's going back to square one within a project. And so helping them understand where the best places and best practices to incorporate within our workflows. And then the last thing that I think is so important, whether you're a small business or whether it's for you, whether it's for a client, whether you're a small business or whether you're a major brand, right now, particularly as we're looking to where the economy is headed and this last portion of the year, really thinking through what are ways, regardless of the business's growth, we can remain human. And so on a macro scale, you're doing macro task, but having a micro level of personalization. So that is typically what will actually close sales and close revenue drivers. I don't know, like if you include somebody's first name within an email subject line, for example, it increases the open rate by over 30%. Like it's just wild, right? And thinking through ways, or like the company that remembers your birthday and that you open up their emails every single time that retailer sends you something, because they remember your birthday and you get a $25 gift card with no minimum purchase every year on your birthday, right? You remember that. Now, the reality is that retailer and that CEO is not staying up at night thinking about your birthday gift card, right? But they've chosen, regardless of the scale of their company, to still remain human. And those are oftentimes the brands that we most love, that we want to shop about, that we're talking about to our friends, regardless of what they do. And within your agency model, thinking about that as well. Maybe you don't have a really large, impressive office that you can invite people to because you have a lot of hybrid work and a remote team. But is there even AI that you can utilize from somebody engaging with you on social from the very first moment to actually drive more human connection, right? So there's lots of ways that we can think about that. We love suggesting clients to utilize something called mini chat, and it allows you to have automated messages to people based off of certain words, and then it gets them into segments and top of funnel really quickly, instead of just telling somebody to go to a LinkedIn profile. And so those are ways that you can engage with people in a more connected way rather than a less connected way. And then it's going to make your team more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those standards of do's and don'ts is really crucial because, like you said, back to when you were saying you don't want to go back to the beginning when you're in a workflow or you're in a process. And a lot of times people do that, right? They're like, they get stuck again. So they almost like start the process over versus being like, no, we have the prompts, we have our ideation. Now what's the next step in the workflow? And I think it's great what you said earlier too about creating SOPs for that. Like, how does a junior team member use this versus how does a seasoned designer use this? And, and who's checking up on that and all of those things. If you don't have that stuff written down, you could lose a lot of control on that. And not that you're trying to micromanage people, but they might go into gray areas that as a company, you don't want to go into as far as how much is being copyrighted, and all of those legalities that come into play. So having those SOPs not only helps those designers or writers move forward and grow and learn, but it helps keep the company safe from a legal standpoint too.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things, because there are so many ways and places you can go, some of these are digital subscriptions, they evolve pretty quickly. And so I always encourage agency owners to actually start out, if you haven't recently, we're almost at end of year planning time, right? November is right around when that happens. And so to think through, what are my current systems and workflows? And don't sit there and just think about it. Actually write them down and map them out, just like you would a user empathy workflow, and do it through the entire process. Do it for each one of your offers and your services, regardless of what the type of custom work might be or the type of retainer you have. And then ask yourself, are our automations working well? Are there ones that need to be updated? Are there specific pain points that we could actually have stronger automations or utilize AI tools to increase our overall efficiency, right? And from there, choose one you want to adopt in the next quarter and that you can provide your team training on, and start with one. And truly, when you do that, you will get the hours back in dividends, right? It's like every single time I talk to an agency owner that hasn't set up a CRM yet, they literally get their time back in dividends once it's finally set up. And so those are the things that we really encourage. Yes, the world of AI is really large, and if you try to swallow it all at once, it will feel really overwhelming. Even as a senior designer and somebody that's really familiar with UX, like, even when I watch a conference and hear about all the new technology that somebody is adding, it's very easy for me to get overwhelmed. Instead, I go, what is a current cog in our wheel, and how can this make us better? And how quickly can we adapt it and feel confident in the client-facing work we're providing?
I think that's so important. It's like, don't buy the whole store. Like, just figure out what you need, what problem in your business you're trying to solve, right? Start there. And then what AI tool would solve that, and just pick one, right? And implement it. I like what you said, do it over a quarter, really get people trained and confident. And then you can add on the other things you might need, right? Like, but it's like, maybe you need the content one and you need an image one, and you can just start with those two. And that's going to do most of everything for you, right? Like, so figuring those things out and really being purposeful about, this is solving this problem. This is going to help us save this amount of time. And knowing that business decision, and not doing the shiny object syndrome of, ooh, new AI tool, let's go do that one. Or your team gets really excited about a certain tool, and it's like, have a plan for when you might implement that, but have them bring a case to you like, hey, this tool is going to help because of X, Y, Z. And if as the CEO or agency owner, you can go, okay, this is going to help me, and this is going to help my clients and my team, then you can adopt it. But don't run after the shiny object syndrome, but find ways to use this to help solve problems for your own business and your clients.
For sure.
That is great. This has been super fun. Is there anything else you want to share before we end?
I don't think so. I mean, I would really encourage people, if you're feeling a little bit nuanced and in the weeds, to feel free to check us out online. We do offer workflow mapping and CRM setups for agencies and small businesses, in addition to our full service of offerings as an agency. And so I really like people to think through as well, like, how can AI actually improve not only your team efficiency, but your overall client experience, right? Because that is something that's so beneficial and really can help people in their level of expectation. It can drive projects forward faster, which I think is so key. Anytime somebody approaches their phone, they in essence have pre-sumer products already existing on their phone before they come to hire you. And so the ability for them to really engage with you and to have things at the speed in which they're they're needed. It's so important, right?
Yeah.
And so being mindful of that, if they have the ability to create something on their phone relatively quickly in a prosumer perspective, if they approach your agency, they don't want to wait 4 months,
Right.
And so thinking through ways that we can really help maximize efficiency over the board. I would love, if you would love to hear from us or ways that we could help you out, you're welcome to go to www.3816creative.com and you can find me anywhere on the internet, actually, at 3816 Creative, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook. We're secured on all of those handles.
Awesome. And yeah, I would encourage anyone to reach out, because if you can get AI set up in your agency right away, I mean, what a bonus, because it's going to get competitive out there, to be honest. People are going to start getting stuff done quicker. They're going to be more efficient. And if you're the agency that didn't adopt AI, in a year from now, it's going to look a whole lot different, right? So don't be afraid of it, embrace it, and learn about it. And I love your innovation days. That is a great thing to just start doing. And that will make you feel not behind the 8 ball with this stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show today, Melissa. And thank you everyone for listening to the Inbound Back Office podcast, brought to you by Inbound Back Office, plug and play back office support for your marketing agency. You can find Inbound Back Office at inboundbackoffice.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a minute, leave us a review, and share it with other agency owners. They need this information. So make sure you share it around. Don't keep it to yourself. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly episodes. Until next time.